The stagecoach wheels kicked up dust that spiraled into the air like golden ribbons, as Emma Jenkins watched the landscape of Wyoming Territory transform before her eyes. The year was 1875, and at 22 years of age, she had crossed half a continent to meet the man who would become her husband, a prosperous rancher named Theodore Williams, who had promised her a life of comfort and security in exchange for becoming his bride. Emma clutched the worn photograph in her gloved hands, the one Theodore had sent her 3 months ago when they began corresponding through the mail-order bride advertisement. The man in the photograph was handsome, with a strong jaw and kind eyes, standing proudly in front of what appeared to be a grand ranch house. His letters had been filled with promises of a beautiful home, fertile land, and a gentle disposition that would make her a cherished wife. The stagecoach lurched to a halt in front of the Benton town post office. Benton, Wyoming was not what she had expected. Instead of the bustling center of commerce Theodore had described in his letters, it was a modest settlement with a single dusty street, lined with wooden buildings weathered by sun and wind. A few horses were hitched outside the saloon, and a handful of townsfolk moved about their business with unhurried steps. "Benton, stop," the driver called out. "All passengers for Benton, this is your destination." Emma gathered her 2 small trunks, all she had brought from her life in Boston, and stepped down onto Wyoming soil for the first time. The autumn air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine from the distant mountains and wood smoke from the town's chimneys. "You must be Miss Jenkins," a wiry man with a gray flecked beard approached her. He was not Theodore Williams. "Name's Jasper, the town's postmaster. Mr. Williams asked me to fetch you and bring you to his place." Emma's heart quickened. "Yes, that's me. Is Mr. Williams unwell?" "I expected he would meet me himself." Jasper's eyes shifted away from her face. "He's, tied up with business. Come along now, it's a fair piece to the Williams place." The journey in Jasper's wagon took them away from town and into the rolling landscape beyond. Emma's anticipation grew with each passing mile, but as they crested a hill, she saw not the grand ranch house from Theodore's photograph, but a dilapidated cabin with a sagging roof and a small corral containing 2 thin horses. "There must be some mistake," Emma said, her voice barely audible over the creak of the wagon wheels. Jasper cleared his throat. "No mistake, miss, that there's the Williams place." A man emerged from the cabin, and Emma's breath caught in her throat. He was at least 20 years older than the photograph suggested, with a gaunt face weathered by sun and hard living. His clothes were worn, his boots cracked with age. "Theodore," Emma whispered, though she already knew the answer. "Welcome to your new home, Miss Jenkins," the man called, his voice rough like he'd spent too many years with whiskey and cigarettes. "I see Jasper got you here in one piece." As Emma descended from the wagon, the reality of her situation began to sink in like a stone in water. The grand ranch house had been a lie. The prosperous cattle business had been a lie. Even Theodore Williams himself had been a lie. The man in the photograph was clearly not the same person now extending a weathered hand toward her. "I don't understand," Emma said, fighting to keep her voice steady. You're not the man from the photograph," Theodore's smile faltered. "Well now, that picture was taken some time back. A man changes." 20 years worth of changes," Emma challenged, anger beginning to replace her shock. "And what of the ranch house you described, the cattle, the orchard?" Theodore's eyes hardened. "Listen here, girl. I paid good money to bring you out here. I need a woman to keep house and warm my bed. That's the deal with mail-order brides. You didn't come all this way to start questioning me." Emma took a step back, clutching her handbag tightly. "Our arrangement was based on certain expectations, Mr. Williams. Expectations you clearly fabricated." "You'll adjust," Theodore said dismissively. "They all do. Now get your things inside. There's supper to be made." Emma stood frozen, the full weight of her predicament crushing down upon her. She was thousands of miles from home with less than $10 to her name. She had no family to return to. Her parents had died of influenza 2 years prior, and the distant cousins who had taken her in had made it clear she was a burden they wished to be rid of. "I will not be adjusting to lies, Mr. Williams," Emma said, surprised at the steadiness in her voice. "Our arrangement is void. Good day to you." She turned to Jasper, who had been watching the exchange with uncomfortable shifting. "Mr. Jasper, would you be so kind as to return me to town?" Theodore's hand shot out, gripping her arm painfully. "Now you listen here. Take your hands off the lady," a deep voice commanded from beyond the fence line. All three turned to see a rider approaching on a chestnut gelding. The man sat tall in the saddle, a worn Stetson shading eyes that assessed the situation with quick intelligence. He wore the practical clothes of a working cowboy: denim pants, a faded blue shirt, and a leather vest. A gun belt sat low on his hips, though his hand remained far from the weapon. Theodore released Emma's arm but sneered at the newcomer. "This ain't your business, Galloway. Ride on." The rider dismounted with fluid grace, revealing himself to be a man in his late 20s, broad-shouldered and tall. "When I see a man manhandling a lady, I make it my business." He tipped his hat toward Emma. "Madam, Adam Galloway, I ranch the neighboring spread." Emma nodded, feeling a surge of gratitude toward this stranger. "Emma Jenkins, I appear to have found myself in an unfortunate situation." Adam Galloway's eyes took in the scene, her trunk still on Jasper's wagon, her distress and Theodore's anger. Understanding dawned in his expression. "Another one, Williams," he said, his voice hardening. "How many times are you going to pull this trick?" Theodore spat on the ground. "Like I said, not your concern." "Miss Jenkins," Adam said, keeping his eyes on Theodore, "I reckon you've discovered that Mr. Williams here isn't exactly forthcoming about his circumstances when he writes to prospective brides." "That would be a generous assessment," Emma replied, her chin lifting slightly. Adam nodded. "Jasper, I think the lady would appreciate a ride back to town." "Now wait just a minute," Theodore growled, stepping forward. "I paid for her passage. She belongs here." "I belong to no one, sir," Emma said firmly, "least of all a liar." Theodore's face reddened with rage, and he moved toward Emma with clenched fists. Adam stepped between them, his stance casual but his eyes alert. "I wouldn't," he said quietly. Theodore hesitated, measuring Adam's resolve, then backed down with a stream of curses. "Fine. Take the uppity little, choose your next words carefully, Williams." Adam cut him off. Theodore glared at them all, then turned and stormed back to his cabin, slamming the door behind him. Adam helped Emma return her trunks to Jasper's wagon, then turned to her. "Miss Jenkins, if you'll permit me, I'll escort you back to town. Benton's not large, but there's a decent boarding house run by a widow named Mrs. Hollister. She might have a room available." Emma found herself nodding, relief washing over her. "That would be most kind, Mr. Galloway." As they traveled back toward town, Emma's mind raced. She had less than $10 and no return ticket to Boston. Even if she could find work in Benton, what kind of life awaited her here? "It's not the first time Williams has done this," Adam said after they had ridden in silence for several minutes. "Lures women out here with promises, only to trap them in a situation they can't easily escape." "Has no one stopped him?" Emma asked. Adam shook his head. "Laws spread thin out here, and most women either resign themselves to it or—" "He trailed off, or," Emma prompted, "or they disappear," Adam said quietly. "Move on, I hope, but no one knows for certain." A chill ran down Emma's spine that had nothing to do with the cooling evening air. "Thank you," she said after another moment of silence, "for intervening." Adam's smile was brief but genuine. "No decent man could have done otherwise, Miss Jenkins." They arrived in Benton as the sun was beginning to set, painting the western sky in vivid oranges and pinks. The town looked different to Emma now, not as a disappointing first glimpse of her new home, but as a sanctuary from a nightmare narrowly avoided. Mrs. Hollister's boarding house was a 2-story structure, painted a faded blue with white trim. The widow herself was a brisk, no-nonsense woman in her 50s who looked Emma up and down with shrewd eyes when Adam explained the situation. "Another one of Williams' victims, eh?" Mrs. Hollister said. "Well, I've got a room available, $2 a week, meals included." Emma's heart sank. At that rate, her money would be gone in a month. "I'll need to find work immediately," she said. Mrs. Hollister nodded. "Town's small, but there might be something. The mercantile sometimes needs help, and Doc Pearson mentioned needing someone to keep his books in order." Miss Jenkins was a schoolteacher back east, Adam offered, surprising Emma. She turned to him. "How did you know?" His eyes crinkled slightly at the corners. "Your speech, the way you hold yourself, and there's a book of poetry sticking out of your handbag." Emma felt her cheeks warm. She hadn't expected such perception from a cowboy. "Well," Mrs. Hollister said, "we haven't had a proper teacher since Miss Abernathy left last spring. The town council's been looking for someone. They've been making do with Reverend Simmons' wife, but she's expecting their third child and can't keep up with it." Hope flickered in Emma's chest. "I would be very interested in discussing such a position." "I'll mention it to Mayor Fletcher in the morning," Mrs. Hollister promised. "Now, let's get you settled in. You must be exhausted after your journey and everything else." Adam helped carry Emma's trunks up to a small but clean room on the second floor with a view of the mountains to the west. When the last trunk was placed at the foot of the narrow bed, Emma turned to him. "Mr. Galloway, I cannot thank you enough for your assistance today." Adam touched the brim of his hat. "Just glad I happened by when I did." He hesitated, then added, "Williams isn't likely to let this go easily. He paid for your passage, and in his mind, that means he owns you." Emma straightened her shoulders. "Well, he is mistaken. I belong to no one but myself." A smile ghosted across Adam's face. "I believe that, Miss Jenkins. Still, be careful. Benton's mostly good people, but it's still the frontier." After Adam left, Mrs. Hollister showed Emma to the washroom and then provided a simple but hearty meal of beef stew and freshly baked bread. By the time Emma returned to her room, darkness had fallen completely. She stood at the window, looking out at the unfamiliar constellation of lights that was Benton at night, and wondered what the coming days would bring. Sleep came fitfully, her dreams haunted by Theodore Williams' angry face and the uncertain future that stretched before her. Morning brought clarity and determination. Emma dressed in her most professional attire, a navy blue skirt and white shirtwaist with her hair pinned neatly atop her head. Mrs. Hollister had already spoken to Mayor Fletcher, who requested to meet with Emma immediately. The town hall of Benton was a modest building that also served as the courthouse when the circuit judge came through every few months. Mayor Fletcher was a portly man with mutton chop sideburns and an air of importance that seemed slightly exaggerated for such a small town. "Miss Jenkins," he said, offering his hand. "Herbert Fletcher, I understand you're a qualified teacher." "I am," Emma confirmed. "I taught for 3 years at the Lindley Academy for Young Ladies in Boston." Mayor Fletcher's eyebrows rose appreciatively. "Impressive. And what brings you to Benton, Wyoming, of all places?" Emma hesitated. "I responded to an advertisement for a mail-order bride, but the situation proved unsuitable." "Theodore Williams," Mayor Fletcher said with a frown. "Yes, Mrs. Hollister mentioned it." "Not the first time he's pulled that stunt, I'm afraid." "So I've been told," Emma said. "I find myself in need of employment, and I understand Benton is in need of a teacher." Mayor Fletcher nodded enthusiastically. "Indeed we are. We have about 20 children of school age from 6 to 16. The schoolhouse is small but serviceable. Pay is $40 a month plus room and board." Emma's heart leaped. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough to live on and perhaps save a little. "When would you like me to start?" she asked. "Can you be ready by Monday?" Mayor Fletcher replied. "That gives you 3 days to prepare. The school's been closed this week anyway, harvest time, you know. Many of the children help their families." "Monday would be perfect," Emma said, relief washing through her. "Excellent," Mayor Fletcher beamed. "The teachers' quarters are behind the schoolhouse, just a small cabin, but it's yours as part of your position." Mrs. Fletcher will help you get settled in tomorrow." Emma left the town hall with a lightness in her step that had been absent since she'd arrived in Wyoming. She had a purpose again, a way to support herself. She wouldn't have to return to Boston in disgrace or worse, be forced to accept Theodore Williams' false bargain out of desperation. As she walked down the main street, familiarizing herself with the town that would be her home for the foreseeable future, she heard the now familiar voice of Adam Galloway. "Miss Jenkins," he called, crossing the street from the general store, "I hear congratulations are in order." Emma smiled. News travels quickly in Benton. One of its charms or curses, depending on your point of view, Adam replied with a grin. "Mayor Fletcher wasted no time securing your services." "The position meets my needs perfectly," Emma admitted. "I'm grateful for the opportunity." Adam fell into step beside her as she continued her exploration of the town. "The schoolhouse is just up ahead if you'd like to see it." Emma nodded eagerly. "I would very much." They walked together, Adam pointing out various establishments, the blacksmith's forge, the small church where Reverend Simmons preached, the doctor's office where the aforementioned Doc Pearson attended to the town's medical needs. The schoolhouse sat at the edge of town, a simple white painted building with a small bell tower. Behind it stood a modest cabin that would be Emma's new home. "It's not grand," Adam said as they approached, "but it's solid. The town built it 5 years ago." "It's perfect," Emma breathed, already imagining the possibilities. Adam produced a key from his pocket. "Mayor Fletcher asked me to give you this, said you might want to look around inside." Emma accepted the key with surprise. "He knew you would see me." Adam's eyes crinkled at the corners again. "Like I said, small town, and I might have mentioned I was heading into town to pick up supplies and could check if you needed anything." The interior of the schoolhouse was a single large room with rows of desks facing a teacher's desk on a small raised platform. Bookshelves lined one wall, though they were sparsely filled. A blackboard took up most of the front wall. "The books are few," Adam noted, following her gaze to the shelves. "Most families can't afford many." "We'll make do," Emma said firmly. "A good teacher can work wonders with limited resources." They exited the schoolhouse and Adam unlocked the small cabin behind it. It consisted of just 2 rooms, a main living area with a wood stove, table, and chair, and a small bedroom beyond. The furnishings were simple but clean. "Mrs. Fletcher will bring linens and such tomorrow," Adam said, "and I'd be happy to help you move your things from the boarding house." Emma turned to him, curious. "You've been very helpful, Mr. Galloway." "Why?" Adam considered her question for a moment. "My mother was a mail-order bride," he said finally. "My father's first wife died in childbirth along with the baby. He was lonely, needed help with the ranch. He advertised and my mother answered. She came all the way from Philadelphia." "Was she happy?" Emma asked softly. A genuine smile spread across Adam's face. "Very. They had a good marriage, 4 children, including me. She always said coming west was the best decision she ever made, but she also said she was lucky. Not all women who answer those advertisements find what they're hoping for." "Like me," Emma said. "You found something different," Adam corrected. "Maybe something better in time." The next 2 days passed in a flurry of activity. Emma moved into the teacher's cabin with help from Adam and Mrs. Fletcher, who arrived with linens, dishes, and basic provisions for her pantry. Several town mothers stopped by to introduce themselves and their children, bringing welcome gifts of preserves, fresh bread, and even a quilt for her bed. On Sunday, Emma attended services at Reverend Simmons' church, where she was formally introduced to the congregation. Most of the town's residents were present, and Emma felt simultaneously overwhelmed and welcomed by their attention. Adam sat with his ranch foreman toward the back of the church, and Emma found her eyes drifting to him more than once during the service. He was a striking figure, even in his Sunday best, a man comfortable in his own skin, with an honest face and eyes that met hers directly when their gazes happened to connect. After the service, families gathered outside the church for socializing. Emma was in the midst of meeting the Dawson family and their 4 school-age children when a commotion at the edge of the churchyard drew everyone's attention. Theodore Williams sat atop a dun-colored horse, his expression thunderous. He was clearly intoxicated, swaying slightly in the saddle. "There she is," he slurred loudly, pointing at Emma. "The thieving little Williams." Mayor Fletcher stepped forward, cutting him off. "This is neither the time nor the place. Go home and sober up." "Not without what's mine," Theodore spat. "I paid good money to bring her here. She owes me." Emma felt the blood drain from her face as all eyes turned toward her. The whispers began immediately, and she could imagine what they were saying. Another of William's mail-order brides, damaged goods, a woman of questionable virtue. "I owe you nothing," Emma called back, her voice surprisingly steady. "Our arrangement was predicated on a series of lies. Any court would void such a contract." Theodore's face contorted with rage. "You highfalutin Eastern girls are all the same, think you're too good for honest work. Teaching 20 children isn't honest work." Adam's voice cut through the murmurs of the crowd as he stepped forward to stand beside Emma. "Miss Jenkins has secured employment and housing without any need for your assistance, Williams. She doesn't owe you a thing." Theodore's bloodshot eyes fixed on Adam. "Always interfering, Galloway, always thinking you're better than the rest of us." His hand drifted toward the gun at his hip. Several women gasped, and fathers moved to shield their children. "That's enough." Sheriff Miller emerged from the crowd, hand on his own weapon. "Williams, you're drunk and disturbing the peace. I'm taking you to the jail to sleep it off. You make one more move toward that gun and you'll regret it." For a tense moment, Theodore seemed to consider his options. Then, with a final venomous glare at Emma and Adam, he let his hand fall away from his weapon. "This isn't over," he muttered as Sheriff Miller approached to take the reins of his horse. "Yes, it is," the sheriff replied firmly. "Miss Jenkins is now the town's schoolteacher and under our protection. You cause her any trouble, and you'll answer to me and the rest of Benton." As Theodore was led away, the crowd began to disperse, though the excited chatter indicated that this would be the primary topic of conversation in Benton for days to come. "Are you all right?" Adam asked quietly, still standing protectively at Emma's side. She nodded, though her hands trembled slightly. "I didn't expect him to make such a public scene. Men like Williams thrive on intimidation," Adam said, but Sheriff Miller meant what he said. "The town values its teacher, and you're part of Benton now." Emma felt a rush of gratitude toward this man who had repeatedly stood up for her since her arrival. "Thank you, Mr. Galloway." "Adam," he corrected with a small smile. "I think we're past formalities, don't you, Miss Jenkins?" "Emma," she replied, returning his smile despite the lingering tension of the confrontation. The first day of school arrived with clear skies and a crisp autumn breeze. Emma stood at the door of the schoolhouse, welcoming each child with a warm smile. The students ranged from 6-year-old Sally Peterson with her missing front teeth to 16-year-old James Cooper, who towered over Emma and looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. By mid-morning, Emma had assessed the various levels of education among her students and organized them into groups. The older children helped the younger ones with basic lessons while Emma worked with each group in turn. At noon, the children spilled outside to eat their packed lunches in the schoolyard. Emma sat on the steps, enjoying her own simple meal of bread and cheese, when she spotted a familiar figure approaching on horseback. Adam Galloway dismounted and tied his horse to the hitching post before approaching. He carried a small wooden crate. "Good afternoon," Emma greeted him. "What brings you to the schoolhouse?" Adam set the crate down beside her. "Thought you and your students might appreciate these." Emma peered inside to find about a dozen books readers, a volume of world history, a book of mathematics problems, and several novels appropriate for various ages. "Adam, these are wonderful," she exclaimed. "Where did you get them?" "Been collecting them over the years," he said with a shrug. "Never had much formal schooling myself, but my mother taught us to value learning. Figured they'd do more good here than gathering dust on my shelves. Emma was touched by the gesture. The children will be thrilled. Our library is quite limited. Adam glanced at the students playing in the yard. How's your first day going? Better than I expected, Emma admitted. They're eager to learn for the most part. Even James Cooper, though he tries to hide it. Adam chuckled. James works part-time at my ranch on weekends. Good kid, just trying to be a man too quickly. You have a way of seeing people clearly, Emma observed. Comes from growing up out here, Adam replied. You learn to size folks up quickly. Sometimes your life depends on it. The school bell rang, signaling the end of the lunch break, and the children began to gather their things. I should let you get back to it, Adam said, stepping back. Just wanted to drop these off. Will you stay for a moment? Emma asked impulsively. Perhaps you could tell the children about ranching. Many of them come from farming families, but I think they'd be interested in hearing about cattle raising. Adam looked uncertain. I'm not much for public speaking. You'll be wonderful, Emma assured him, and it would be educational. Reluctantly, Adam agreed, and soon he found himself standing before 20 curious children, explaining the seasonal cycle of cattle ranching in Wyoming. To Emma's delight, he was a natural storyteller once he got past his initial discomfort, and the children listened with rapt attention as he described roundups, cattle drives, and the challenges of winter on the range. My ranch, the Triple G, runs about 500 head of cattle, he explained. Not the biggest spread in the territory, but it's growing. My father started it with just 50 head 25 years ago. Is your pa still running it with you? Asked 10-year-old Billy Matthews. A shadow passed over Adam's face. No, son, lost both my parents to influenza 3 years back. It's just me now. Emma felt a pang of sympathy. Like her, Adam had lost his parents to the same devastating illness that swept through communities with terrifying regularity. When the impromptu lesson ended, the children thanked Adam enthusiastically, especially the boys, many of whom now looked at him with undisguised admiration. You were excellent, Emma told him as he prepared to leave. You have a real gift for connecting with children. Adam looked pleased but embarrassed by the praise. They're good kids. Reminds me of growing up with my brothers and sister. Do they live nearby? Emma asked. Adam shook his head. My oldest brother took over our uncle's farm in Nebraska. My sister married a shopkeeper in Cheyenne. And my younger brother, his expression darkened slightly. Michael rode south after our parents died. Haven't heard from him in 2 years. I'm sorry, Emma said softly. Adam shrugged, though the casualness seemed forced. That's the West for you. People come and go. He tipped his hat. I should let you get back to your teaching, Miss Jenkins. Emma, she reminded him gently. His smile returned. Emma. The following weeks settled into a rhythm. Emma's days were filled with teaching, preparing lessons, and getting to know the townspeople. She found herself welcomed into Benton's small society, invited to Sunday dinners and social gatherings. Adam became a regular visitor to the schoolhouse, sometimes bringing books or other educational materials he thought might be useful. Other times offering to teach the children specific skills like map reading or identifying edible plants. Emma suspected these visits were as much to check on her welfare as they were to contribute to the children's education, especially after Sheriff Miller released Theodore Williams from jail. The mail-order bride deceiver had been unusually quiet since his public humiliation, but Emma occasionally felt eyes watching her as she walked through town. Sheriff Miller assured her that Williams wouldn't dare cause trouble, but the unease lingered. One crisp October afternoon, Emma dismissed her students early so she could attend the town meeting where the winter social calendar would be planned. As the children scattered to their homes, Emma gathered her materials and locked the schoolhouse. She was halfway to the town hall when Adam rode up beside her, looking concerned. Emma, he said without preamble, Williams was in town earlier, drinking heavily at the saloon. He was making threats. Emma's step faltered. What kind of threats? Nothing specific, Adam said, but he mentioned your name several times. I don't think you should be alone right now." "I'm heading to the town meeting," Emma assured him. "I'll be surrounded by people." Adam nodded, but his expression remained troubled. "I'll accompany you if you don't mind." They walked together toward the town hall, Adam leading his horse. Emma was acutely aware of his protective presence beside her, and found it both comforting and something that made her heart beat a little faster when their hands accidentally brushed. The town meeting proceeded without incident. Plans were made for a harvest festival, a Christmas pageant, and various other social events to carry the community through the long winter months ahead. Emma volunteered to organize the children's performances for several occasions, earning approving nods from parents. As the meeting concluded and people began to disperse into the early evening darkness, Sheriff Miller approached Emma and Adam. "Miss Jenkins, I'm glad I caught you," he said, his expression serious. "Theodore Williams checked out of the hotel this afternoon after causing a scene at the saloon. He was making some troubling statements." "So I heard," Emma replied, glancing at Adam. "I'd feel better if you weren't alone tonight," the sheriff continued. "Mrs. Miller and I have a spare room if you'd like to stay with us." Before Emma could respond, a commotion erupted outside. Shouts and the alarming smell of smoke sent everyone rushing to the doors. In the distance, at the edge of town, an orange glow lit the darkening sky. "Fire!" someone shouted. "The schoolhouse is on fire!" Emma's heart stopped. Her home, her few possessions, the books and materials she'd carefully collected for her students, all were in danger. The town mobilized instantly. Men grabbed buckets while women organized a line to the water pump. Adam pressed Emma's hand briefly before sprinting to his horse. "Stay here," he called over his shoulder. "It's not safe," but Emma couldn't stay behind. This was her life burning. She ran alongside the townspeople toward the growing inferno. The schoolhouse was fully engulfed by the time they arrived. Flames licked at the night sky, consuming the wooden structure with terrifying speed. The bucket brigade formed quickly, but it was immediately clear that the schoolhouse couldn't be saved. Instead, they focused on keeping the fire from spreading to Emma's small cabin and the surrounding trees. Through the chaos, Emma caught a glimpse of a figure watching from the shadows beyond the firelight. Theodore Williams, his face illuminated momentarily by the flames, a satisfied smile twisting his features. Their eyes met across the distance, and he tipped his hat mockingly before disappearing into the darkness. "It was Williams," Emma gasped, grabbing Sheriff Miller's arm as he passed with a bucket. "I saw him watching from the trees." The sheriff handed his bucket to another man. "Stay here," he ordered, drawing his pistol and moving toward where Emma had pointed. Adam appeared at her side, his face streaked with soot. "Are you all right?" "Williams did this," Emma said, her voice shaking with anger and shock. "I saw him." Adam's expression hardened. "Sheriff's gone after him. Let's focus on saving your cabin." For 2 exhausting hours, the townspeople fought the fire. The schoolhouse was lost completely, but they managed to save Emma's small home, though the side facing the school was scorched and the windows had shattered from the heat. As the flames finally died down to smoldering embers, Emma stood amid the devastated remains of the schoolhouse, tears streaming down her face. All the books, including those Adam had given her, all the slates and chalk, the children's work displayed on the walls, everything was gone. "We'll rebuild," Mayor Fletcher said, joining her with a solemn expression. "The town will come together. We'll have a new schoolhouse before winter sets in properly." Emma nodded mutely, too overcome with emotion to speak. Sheriff Miller returned, his expression grim. "Williams is gone. Found tracks heading north, but it's too dark to follow them safely. I'll organize a posse at first light." "He should hang for this," someone muttered, and murmurs of agreement rippled through the gathered townsfolk. "First we have to catch him," the sheriff replied. "Miss Jenkins, your cabin isn't safe tonight. The roof needs inspection and the windows are gone. You'll need somewhere to stay." "She can stay at my ranch," Adam said. I have plenty of room, and it's far enough from town that Williams won't think to look there if he doubles back." Sheriff Miller considered this, then nodded. "Might be for the best. Williams has a personal grudge against both of you. I'd feel better knowing you're somewhere secure with capable hands." Emma was too exhausted and shocked to argue. With the sheriff's blessing, she gathered what few possessions she could from her damaged cabin, wrapped in a blanket Mrs. Fletcher provided, and allowed Adam to help her onto his horse. The ride to the Triple G ranch took nearly an hour, much of it in silence. Emma sat behind Adam in the saddle, her arms around his waist, drawing comfort from his solid presence. The night was clear and cold, stars scattered like diamond dust across the Wyoming sky. "I'm sorry about the schoolhouse," Adam said finally, breaking the silence. "And the books." "Books can be replaced," Emma replied, her voice hoarse from smoke and crying. "I'm just thankful no one was hurt." The ranch appeared as they crested a hill, a collection of buildings nestled in a sheltered valley with mountains rising in the distance. Unlike Theodore Williams' dilapidated cabin, this was a proper working ranch. The main house was a substantial two-story structure built of sturdy logs, with a wide porch wrapping around the front. Several smaller buildings, a bunkhouse, barn, and various outbuildings formed a rough square around a central yard. A man emerged from the bunkhouse as they approached, rifle in hand, until he recognized Adam. "Frank," Adam called out, "everything quiet." "All's well, boss," the man replied, lowering his weapon. "Wasn't expecting you back tonight. There's been trouble in town," Adam explained briefly. "Miss Jenkins will be staying with us for a while. Her home was damaged in a fire." Frank's eyes widened as he took in Emma's soot-stained appearance. "The missus can fix up a room right quick," he said, referring to his wife. "She's still awake, I reckon." "Much appreciated," Adam replied, helping Emma dismount. Frank's wife, Martha, was indeed still awake and immediately took charge, clucking over Emma like a mother hen. She was a sturdy woman in her 40s with kind eyes and capable hands. Within 30 minutes, Emma found herself bathed, dressed in a borrowed nightgown, and tucked into a comfortable bed in a guest room at the main house. "You rest easy now," Martha said, placing a cup of chamomile tea on the bedside table. "You're safe here." Emma wanted to thank her, to express gratitude for the kindness of these strangers, but exhaustion overcame her. She was asleep before Martha closed the door. She woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar curtains and the distant sounds of a working ranchman calling to each other. The lowing of cattle, the rhythmic pounding of a hammer on metal from what must be the blacksmith's forge. For a moment, Emma was disoriented. Then the events of the previous night came rushing back: the fire, William's mocking smile, the destruction of the schoolhouse, and Adam bringing her to the safety of his ranch. She dressed quickly in her smoke-scented clothes from yesterday, the only ones she had, and made her way downstairs. The main floor of Adam's home was open and welcoming, with a large living area dominated by a stone fireplace and a well-appointed kitchen where Martha was busy preparing breakfast. "Good morning, Miss Jenkins," Martha greeted her warmly. "How did you sleep?" "Better than I expected, thank you," Emma replied truthfully. Despite the trauma of the night before, she had fallen into a deep, dreamless sleep. "Mr. Galloway's out checking the herd, but he left word for you to make yourself at home," Martha continued, placing a plate of eggs, bacon, and biscuits on the table. "Eat up now, you'll need your strength." Emma was surprised to find she was ravenous. As she ate, Martha filled her in on the goings-on of the ranch. "Frank and I have been with the Galloways since Adam was just a boy," she explained. "We look after the house and help with the cooking for the ranch hands. There's 6 cowboys working here full-time, plus seasonal help when needed." "It seems like a substantial operation," Emma observed. Martha nodded proudly. "Mr. Galloway, Adam's father, built it up from nothing, and Adam's done right by it since he took over. Triple G is one of the most respected ranches in the territory." The sound of hoofbeats announced riders approaching. Emma moved to the window to see Sheriff Miller and two deputies dismounting in the yard. Adam emerged from the barn to greet them. "I should go down," Emma said, setting aside her napkin. "They'll want to speak with me about what I saw." Martha nodded. "There's a shawl by the door you can borrow. Morning's still got a bite to it." Emma wrapped the soft woolen shawl around her shoulders and stepped out onto the porch just as Adam and the sheriff were approaching the house. "Miss Jenkins," Sheriff Miller greeted her, touching the brim of his hat. "How are you holding up?" "I'm well, thank you," Emma replied. "Have you found Williams?" The sheriff's expression turned grim. "Not yet. We tracked him about 10 miles north before the trail went cold. He knows this country probably cut through the river to hide his tracks. We've posted men on all the roads," one of the deputies added. "He won't get far." "What about the schoolhouse?" Emma asked. "Mayor Fletcher's already organizing rebuilding efforts," Sheriff Miller assured her. "The town's pulling together. Until it's complete, Reverend Simmons has offered the church for classes." Emma felt a wave of relief. Her students' education wouldn't be completely disrupted. "When can I return to town?" she asked. The three men exchanged glances. "I'd prefer you stay here for a few days," Sheriff Miller said carefully. "Until we apprehend Williams. He's made his vendetta against you quite personal, and I'd rather not take chances." "I can't impose on Mr. Galloway indefinitely," Emma protested. "It's no imposition," Adam said firmly. "My home is large and Martha appreciates the company. Your safety is the priority now." Sheriff Miller nodded. "I've brought some of your belongings from your cabin, what could be salvaged." He gestured to one of the deputies, who fetched a small trunk from his horse. "Mrs. Fletcher also sent some clothes she thought might fit you." Emma was touched by the thoughtfulness. "Please convey my thanks to her." After the sheriff and his deputies departed, promising to send word as soon as Williams was captured, Emma found herself alone with Adam for the first time since arriving at the ranch. "I can't thank you enough for your hospitality," she said, suddenly awkward in his presence. Adam smiled, the expression transforming his serious face. "You do the same for anyone in trouble. Still," Emma insisted, "you've been exceptionally kind to a virtual stranger." "I'd hardly call you a stranger," Adam replied. "I've seen you teaching, interacting with the children and the townspeople. I've watched you build a life in Benton despite a difficult start." He paused, seeming to choose his next words carefully. "I admire your resilience, Emma." The compliment warmed her more than it should have. "What will happen to the children's education while I'm here?" she asked, changing the subject to safer ground. "I've already sent word to town," Adam assured her. Frank rode in at first light. "Reverend Simmons will announce that school will resume in the church the day after tomorrow, once things are organized. In the meantime, I thought you might like to rest and recover from your ordeal." Emma shook her head. "I'd rather keep busy. Idle hands give way to troublesome thoughts." Adam studied her for a moment, then nodded. "In that case, would you like a tour of the ranch? It might help take your mind off things." The day passed pleasantly as Adam showed Emma around the Triple G. She met the ranch hands, all of whom treated her with respectful deference. She saw the cattle grazing in the valley, the horses in the corrals, the vegetable garden Martha tended that supplied much of the ranch's produce, and the small apple orchard Adam's mother had planted years ago. "It's all so different from Boston," Emma commented as they walked back toward the house in the late afternoon light. "The space, the freedom, the connection to the land." Adam nodded. "It gets in your blood. I can't imagine living anywhere else now." "I thought I would hate it here," Emma admitted. "When I realized Theodore had lied about everything, I wanted nothing more than to return east. But now—" She looked out over the valley, the mountains turning purple in the distance. "There's a beauty to Wyoming I never expected to find." "And yet you still plan to leave?" Adam asked quietly. The question caught Emma by surprise. I haven't thought that far ahead," she said truthfully. "My focus has been on teaching the children and establishing myself in Benton." Adam stopped walking, turning to face her directly. "The town needs a teacher," he said. "The children respond well to you, and there are people who would." He hesitated. Who would be sorry to see you go? The intensity in his eyes made Emma's breath catch. People, she repeated softly. Yes, Adam said, then more firmly, me for one. Before Emma could respond, a ranch hand came riding up at a gallop. Boss, he called out, just got word from town. Williams was spotted near the Wilkins farm, heading this way. Adam's expression immediately hardened. How long ago? About an hour, according to the messenger, the ranch hand replied. Sheriffs gathered a posse and they're in pursuit, but Williams has a head start. Adam turned to Emma, all traces of their previous conversation gone from his face. Get to the house, he said urgently. Tell Frank what's happening, he'll know what to do. What about you? Emma asked, suddenly afraid. I'm going to make sure the men are armed and ready, Adam replied grimly. Williams won't set foot on Triple G land without a fight. Emma hurried back to the house, her heart pounding. Frank responded to the news with calm efficiency, immediately checking his rifle and positioning himself at a window with a clear view of the approach to the ranch. Martha, he called to his wife, take Miss Jenkins upstairs to the storage room. Martha nodded, grabbing Emma's arm. Come along, dear, it's the safest place if there's trouble. But I can help, Emma protested. Best help is staying out of harm's way, Frank replied firmly. Mr. Galloway would never forgive us if something happened to you. The storage room was at the back of the house on the second floor. It had no windows but was spacious enough, filled with trunks and boxes of household items. Martha positioned herself near the door with a loaded shotgun across her lap, her usual cheerful expression replaced with grim determination. You know how to use that? Emma asked, eyeing the weapon. Since I was 12, Martha replied matter-of-factly. My pa taught all us girls to shoot. Living out here, it's a necessary skill. Hours passed with excruciating slowness. As dusk approached, Emma could hear the men moving around outside, their voices tense as they prepared for a possible attack. The waiting was unbearable. I should be doing something, Emma said for the third time, pacing the small space between the trunks. Martha shook her head. You are doing something. You're staying alive. That man wants you dead, Miss Jenkins. Don't make it easy for him. A sudden commotion outside made them both freeze. Shouts, the thunder of hooves, then a single gunshot that echoed across the valley. Emma rushed to the door, but Martha blocked her way. Not yet, the older woman warned. Wait until we know it's safe. More shouts, then the sound of many horses approaching at a gallop. Minutes later, Frank's voice called up the stairs. Martha, Miss Jenkins, it's all clear. They emerged from the storage room to find Frank waiting at the bottom of the stairs, his face split in a wide grin. Sheriff got him, he announced triumphantly. Cornered Williams about a mile from here. He tried to shoot his way out but didn't stand a chance against the posse. Is he? Emma couldn't finish the question. Wounded, not dead, Frank clarified. Took a bullet in the shoulder. They're taking him back to town to face charges. Arson, attempted murder. He'll be seeing the inside of the territorial prison for a good long while. Relief washed over Emma so strongly that her knees nearly buckled. Martha steadied her with a supportive arm. Where's Adam? Emma asked, realizing he wasn't among the men filing into the yard. Frank's expression sobered. He rode out with the sheriff to make sure Williams was secured. Should be back soon. It was nearly midnight when Adam finally returned. Emma had refused to go to bed, instead waiting anxiously in the living room, jumping at every sound. When she heard his horse approach, she rushed to the door. Adam looked exhausted as he climbed the porch steps, his face drawn and his clothes dusty from the long ride. Williams is in jail, he said without preamble. Doc Pearson patched up his shoulder, and he'll stand trial as soon as the circuit judge arrives next month. Thank you, Emma said fervently, for everything. Adam shook his head. No need for thanks, I'm just glad you're safe. They stood looking at each other in the dim light of the porch lantern, so much unsaid between them. Finally, Adam broke the silence. It's late, you should get some rest. We can talk more in the morning. But morning brought a message from town. The temporary schoolroom in the church was ready, and the children were expected to resume their lessons the following day. Emma felt torn between duty to her students and reluctance to leave the ranch to leave Adam. "I'll escort you," Adam said when she told him the news, "and I'll check on the progress of your cabin repairs. You'll need proper accommodations in town." The ride to Benton was quiet, each lost in their own thoughts. The town greeted Emma as a returning hero, the brave schoolteacher who had stood up to Theodore Williams and survived his vengeance. Children ran up to her horse, calling her name excitedly and telling her about their contributions to the new schoolhouse being built. Mayor Fletcher met them at the church, where benches had been arranged to serve as desks and a portable blackboard had been installed. "It's not ideal," he apologized, "but it will serve until the new schoolhouse is complete. We're hoping to have it finished within 6 weeks, weather permitting." "This is more than adequate," Emma assured him. "I'm just eager to resume teaching." "As for your living arrangements," the mayor continued, "Mrs. Hollister has offered you a room at the boarding house until your cabin is repaired." Emma nodded, though the thought of returning to the boarding house lacked appeal after the comfort of Adam's home. "I should return to the ranch," Adam said once they had inspected the makeshift classroom and Emma's damaged cabin. "I've neglected my duties these past few days." "Of course," Emma replied, trying to mask her disappointment. "Thank you again for your hospitality." Adam hesitated, then reached for her hand. "Emma, about what I started to say yesterday before we were interrupted, Mr. Galloway," Mayor Fletcher called, hurrying toward them. "A moment of your time, if you please." Adam released Emma's hand with a frustrated sigh. "Later," he promised quietly, then turned to address the mayor's concerns about lumber for the new schoolhouse. Later never came. In the weeks that followed, Emma threw herself into teaching, working long hours to help her students make up for lost time. Adam visited town occasionally on ranch business, and though he always made a point to stop by the church to check on her, they were never alone long enough for a private conversation. The new schoolhouse rose quickly, the entire town pitching in to complete it before the first heavy snowfall. It was larger and sturdier than the original, with proper desks donated by a furniture maker in Cheyenne, and a small but growing library courtesy of a collection taken up by the townsfolk. Emma's cabin was repaired as well, the scorched siding replaced, and new glass installed in the windows. Yet as she prepared to move back into her small home, she found herself thinking more and more of the Triple G Ranch and its owner. The first snow of winter fell on the day the new schoolhouse was officially dedicated. The entire town gathered for the ceremony, including Adam and several of his ranch hands. Emma cut the ribbons stretched across the doorway to enthusiastic cheers from her students and their families. "You've done a remarkable thing here," Adam told her as people began to disperse after the celebration. "These children are fortunate to have you as their teacher." "I'm the fortunate one," Emma replied. "The town has been so supportive, especially after what happened." Adam glanced at the darkening sky and the steadily falling snow. "I should head back to the ranch before this gets worse," he said reluctantly. "Yes, of course," Emma agreed, hiding her disappointment once again. Adam mounted his horse, then paused, looking down at her with an unreadable expression. "The ranch Christmas party is next Saturday," he said suddenly. "All the hands and their families attend. Would you consider joining us as my guest?" Emma's heart leaped. "I would be delighted," she said, unable to suppress a smile. Adam's answering smile transformed his face. "I'll come for you at noon on Saturday, then." The week passed with agonizing slowness. Emma found herself distracted during lessons, her mind wandering to the upcoming party and what it might mean that Adam had specifically invited her as his guest. When Saturday finally arrived, Emma spent extra time on her appearance, choosing her best dress, a deep green wool that complemented her auburn hair, and arranging her curls more carefully than usual. Adam arrived precisely at noon, looking more polished than Emma had ever seen him in a clean black coat and crisp white shirt. His eyes widened appreciatively when she opened the door. "You look beautiful," he said simply. "Thank you," Emma replied, feeling a blush rise to her cheeks. "You look quite handsome yourself." The ride to the ranch was filled with easy conversation, catching up on the events of the past weeks. Adam told her about the preparations for winter on the ranch, and Emma shared stories about her students' progress. As they approached the Triple G, Emma was struck by the transformation. Evergreen boughs decorated the porch railings, red ribbons brightened the door and windows, and inside, the house glowed with warmth and light. Martha greeted them enthusiastically, ushering them into the crowded main room where ranch hands and their families were already enjoying food, drink, and music provided by two cowboys with fiddles, and a third with a harmonica. The afternoon passed in a whirl of introductions, conversations, delicious food, and laughter. Emma found herself welcomed warmly by everyone, treated not as an outsider but as an honored guest. Several of the ranch hands had children who attended her school, and they thanked her earnestly for her dedication to their education. As evening approached and lanterns were lit against the early darkness, Adam found Emma by the fireplace, where she had been deep in conversation with Martha about Christmas traditions. "Would you care to step outside for a moment?" he asked quietly. "I'd like to show you something." Emma nodded, accepting the heavy shawl he offered against the cold. They slipped out onto the porch, now dusted with a fresh layer of snow that sparkled in the moonlight. "It's beautiful," Emma breathed, taking in the winter landscape. "Yes," Adam agreed, though his eyes were on her rather than the scenery. "Emma, there's something I've been wanting to tell you." Her heart quickened at his tone. "What is it?" Adam took a deep breath. "From the moment I saw you standing up to Theodore Williams, I knew you were special. Your courage, your determination, your kindness with the children, everything about you has only confirmed that first impression." He took her hands in his. "I know you came west with different expectations. You thought you were starting a life with someone else. But sometimes fate has other plans for us." "Adam," Emma whispered, hardly daring to hope where this was leading. "I love you, Emma Jenkins," Adam said, his voice steady and sure. "I think I've loved you since that first day. I know it hasn't been long, and I'll understand if you need time, but I couldn't wait any longer to tell you how I feel." Joy bubbled up inside Emma like a spring. "I don't need time," she said, squeezing his hands. "I love you too, Adam. I think I realized it the night of the fire, when you brought me here and made me feel safe when my world was falling apart." Adam's smile was radiant in the moonlight. Slowly, he bent his head toward hers, giving her every opportunity to pull away. Instead, Emma rose on her tiptoes to meet him halfway. Their first kiss was gentle, a tender exploration filled with promise. When they finally parted, Adam rested his forehead against hers. "I have something else to ask you," he said softly. "I know it might seem soon, but I've never been more certain of anything in my life." He stepped back and, to Emma's astonishment, dropped to one knee in the snow. "Emma Jenkins, would you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife? Of making the Triple G your home, and me the happiest man in Wyoming Territory?" Tears of happiness sprang to Emma's eyes. "Yes," she whispered, then louder. "Yes, Adam Galloway, I will marry you." Adam surged to his feet and swept her into his arms, spinning her around on the snowy porch while she laughed with pure joy. Their second kiss was deeper, filled with all the love and promise of their future together. When they finally returned to the party, hand in hand, their news was met with cheers and congratulations. Martha wiped away happy tears, Frank slapped Adam on the back, and everyone toasted the newly engaged couple with glasses of cider. They were married on Christmas Eve in the new schoolhouse, decorated with evergreens and lit by dozens of candles. The entire town attended, children sitting cross-legged at the front to witness their beloved teacher become Mrs. Galloway. As Emma and Adam spoke their vows, she reflected on the strange journey that had brought her to this moment. She had come west seeking security with a man who had lied about everything. Instead, she had found true love with a man whose every word and action was rooted in honesty and integrity. The Triple G became Emma's home, though she continued to teach in town, riding back and forth each day when weather permitted. In spring, Adam built in addition to the main house a library filled with books he ordered specially from Denver and Chicago, a wedding gift that brought tears to Emma's eyes when she first saw it. A year after their wedding, Emma gave birth to a son they named James, after Adam's father. 2 years later, a daughter named Margaret joined their family. The Triple G prospered under Adam's management, expanding its operations and its reputation throughout the territory. Theodore Williams served 5 years in the territorial prison for arson and attempted murder. Upon his release, he left Wyoming for good, heading further west to Oregon where, it was rumored, he attempted his mail-order bride scheme once more. This time, however, his potential victim was warned by a letter from Sheriff Miller of Benton, Wyoming. Emma never regretted her decision to come west, despite its harrowing beginning. On warm summer evenings, she and Adam would sit on the porch of their home, watching their children play in the yard while the sun set behind the mountains, painting the Wyoming sky in breathtaking colors. "Do you ever think about how differently our lives might have turned out?" Adam asked her one such evening, their hands intertwined as they had been since that snowy night of his proposal. Emma smiled, watching their son attempt to teach their daughter how to lasso a fence post. "I think some things are meant to be," she replied. "I came west looking for a home and found it just not with the man I expected. I'm grateful every day that Williams turned out to be such a convincing liar," Adam admitted with a wry smile. "If he'd been even halfway decent, I might never have had the chance to win your heart." "You would have found a way," Emma said confidently, leaning her head against his shoulder. "Some loves are simply inevitable." As they sat together watching the Wyoming sunset, Emma knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be, not with the man who had lied about everything to bring her west, but with the truthful cowboy who had shown her the real meaning of home. In time, the Triple G grew into one of the most prosperous ranches in Wyoming Territory. James and Margaret were joined by 2 more siblings, another boy they named William, and a girl they called Elizabeth. All 4 Galloway children received an excellent education, first from their mother and then at schools in Cheyenne and even Denver as they grew older. Emma continued teaching in Benton until the youngest of her children started school, at which point she retired to focus on her family and establish the first proper library in town, donating many of her own books to get it started. The new schoolhouse she had helped inaugurate was eventually replaced by a larger brick building as Benton grew along with Wyoming itself. When the territory achieved statehood in 1890, Adam was elected to serve on the first state legislature, a position he accepted with the same quiet integrity he brought to everything in his life. Through the years, their love only deepened, weathering the challenges of ranch life, parenthood, and the changing frontier with the same strength and honesty that had drawn them together. And whenever anyone asked how they had met, Emma would smile and say, "I came west as a mail-order bride for another man, but fate had other plans." It wasn't the life she had expected when she boarded that stagecoach so many years ago, but it was a far better one than she could have ever imagined.